Hey, this is Gina Grad.
Hi, this is Teresa Strasser.
Hi, everyone. This is Mike Errico.
Hey there, this is Casey Cavalier.
I'm Rocky Rose.
And you are listening to The Jay Franze Show.
Lucky you.
Welcome to The Jay Franze Show. A behind-the-curtain look at the entertainment industry with insights you can't pay for and stories you've never heard. Now, here's your host, Jay Franze.
Well, hello and welcome to the show. I am Jay Franze, and if you are new here, this is where we take a deep dive into the entertainment industry to provide you with valuable insights and entertaining stories. This week, we get to talk with an Emmy Award-winning writer and TV personality. We get to talk with Teresa Strasser. We'll talk to her about what inspired her to work in entertainment, what it was like hosting while you were out, and we'll take a deep dive into her latest book, Making It Home. Now, Teresa is not only an amazing talent with a diverse career spanning both radio and television, but she's an incredible author, and I can't wait to talk with her tonight. So if you would like to join in, comment, or fire off any questions, please head over to jayfranze.com. Now let's get started. Teresa, my friend, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
It is a pleasure. I cannot wait to have this conversation with you tonight. So why don't we just go ahead and jump right in? What inspired you to work in television?
Well, when I grew up in the 70s, my mom was working a couple jobs. My parents were divorced. Obviously, all I did was watch TV. So it was Taxi, Good Times, Alice. I was raised by TV like a lot of Gen Xers, and I just thought, I want to be in that box. How do I get into that box? Also, I always went to the movies. My mom would give my brother and I, $5, and we take the bus, and then he was older, so I'd have to see what he wanted, which was like 007 or Rocky or Rambo. And I just thought, how do you get up there? Then I was a huge radio person. So I grew up in San Francisco, and we sort of had a local Howard Stern. His name was Alex Bennett, and he had all of the San Francisco comedians on. And a lot of them went on to have great careers. I'm talking Robin Williams, Bobcat, guys like that. And I had a Walkman, and I had an hour-long bus ride to school, taking the city bus. And I would listen to Alex Bennett and think, how do you get on the radio? How do you do that? And then I was a huge Howard Stern fan, going to school at NYU in New York when he was just in New York, and would listen to Robin and think, how does anyone become Robin Quivers? How does that happen? So that was always my goal. My mom used to also take me to a lot of live performance. We'd be in the cheap seats, and I remember she took me to whatever was in town, and a lot of times it wasn't anything a kid would like. I mean, like Richard II, I mean, that was not for me. But Annie, I was like, I want to be one of those orphans. I don't even need to be Annie. I can be an orphan that has 3 lines. I just want to be up there.
That's awesome. You mentioned a handful of shows in there, shows I haven't thought about in a long time, like Alice. I can see your humor, like Flo. You remember Flo from Alice?
A Kiss My Grits.
Yeah, I can see that sense of humor right there for sure. That's fantastic.
So much chemistry. And then I loved Vera. She was such a sweet soul. But yeah, to me, the Jeffersons and Good Times. Good Times, everything I learned about the world was through that family. I don't know why. But I just, yeah, exactly. And Florida. Yeah, I love that show. And of course, there was a lot of great actors on that show.
Oh, yeah, no, that reminds me of so many shows. I grew up in that time myself, so that's what my TV was set to back, when people watch TV. Now we just scroll through YouTube all day long.
I know. And, because it was just me and my mom. My mom was she wasn't that into parenting. She was just not. She was benignly neglectful. So it was a really big deal for me if I got to be in my mom's room at night where she had a black and white TV. And then either at 11 or at 1 a.m., if I really had bad insomnia, she would let me in there. And that's when the Taxi, they would, show the reruns of Taxi. I mean, what was more brilliant than Mary Lou Henner, Judd Hirsch, the guy who played Ignatowski, who was then in the Back to the Future movies.
Yeah, he's awesome too.
Danny DeVito, Rhea Perlman.
Yep.
Oh, loved it.
That was another great show. Yeah. Those were shows my parents would watch too. So like you, I would just, in order to get time with my father, I'd watch Taxi or Cheers or things like that.
Oh my God. Cheers. I mean, I once got to interview Ted Danson when I was filling in on The View, and he was so kind and sweet. You know, I was auditioning for the job, and after I did the interview, he like kind of leaned in, put his hand on my shoulder in a very, very non-creepy way, and he said, "They should give you this job." You know, like he probably would have said that to anybody, but it meant so much to me and it cost him nothing.
You, my friend, you've been on TV yourself.
Yeah. I've been all over basic cable.
You've been on a show that I used to watch a lot with my wife, and that was While You Were Out. Can you tell me just a little bit about that, what it was like behind the scenes there?
Yeah, it's funny because here I've been doing this career for so long. You know, I started as a writer when I was 19, and I've been on the radio, on TV. I've just written my second book, but probably most people know me from While You Were Out, which was a decorating show on TLC. And you know what? I think there's a reason it was popular. It was produced by the BBC, and they were really true documentarians. And so we really, truly did this makeover on a budget of $1,500 with a ticking clock in 2 days. And there was real jeopardy. And the carpenter, Andrew Dan Jumbo, who was one of People Magazine's 50 most beautiful people, he really would make a chair in a day and, you know, reupholster a couch. And we really were painting, and the homeowners really were stressed out, and we were, you know, always tricking somebody, and there was real intrigue, and it was really a beautifully done show. I did 50 episodes. We were all over the country shooting everywhere. And I actually replaced somebody. They had another host. She was there, I think, for 7 episodes, and they just didn't feel the chemistry was working out. And I've gotten almost every single job in my career because somebody else was losing it.
So you're the replacement.
Yeah. What that says about me is I'm never the first choice. When they were first hiring a host for While You Were Out, they saw everybody. They saw hundreds of people in LA and New York, and I wasn't even invited. My agent couldn't even get me in the door. But after you've already seen everybody and you're like, who's left? That's when you meet me. And I think when you meet me, you think, well, she's probably not going to get drunk on set or, you know, hit on people's husbands or become a problem. And at that point, when I got that job, I'd already been working as a writer. I'd won an Emmy as a writer. So I think maybe there was a feeling of oh, this person is probably grounded and we can trust her to improvise a lot because obviously we were, you know, on the road, and it's not like we had time to sit down and write a script. So almost everything that I said on that show, I was writing in real time.
Well, that's that sense of timing that you have. I mean, that comedic sense of timing you have is incredible. When we talk about Alice, that's why I think of that Flo character. But it's got a little bit of sass to it, and it's got that, you know, that little extra bit of flavor to it.
Thank you. Like Flo, but Jewier. She had a real Southern thing.
She did, and I'm living in the South right now, so I can't say anything. My wife's from the South. Me being the Yankee from Boston, living in the South here.
But you don't have I want you to have the Good Will Hunting accent.
Yeah, parking the car in Harvard Yard, you know what I'm saying, huh?
Yeah.
Only when I go home.
Oh, really? Well, speaking of Good Will Hunting.
Best movie ever.
I'm obsessed with that movie, okay? And my favorite scene is nobody else's favorite scene.
Which one is it?
Okay, so I see now Good Will Hunting purely through the lens of baseball.
Okay.
And here's why. That is a movie, to me, among other things, about baseball. The entire framing device of Robin Williams' arc is that he falls in love, and the reason he knows he's in love, and it's real, is because he gives up his tickets to the baseball game. Yep. He tells his friends, I got to go see about a girl. And of course, the very last scene that bookends the movie is when Matt Damon says, I got to go see about a girl. And of course, that girl is Minnie Driver. But in the middle, there's a 1 minute and 20-second scene that is my favorite scene that tells you every single thing about the characters, the relationship, the town, who they are to each other, what the town is like. And that is a scene where they are at a Little League game, apropos of nothing. They're just at a Little League game, and like they know the kids, they know who's good, okay? Because
they're yelling at them.
They're like, take two, Mac. My accent's not as good as yours. But, you know, he's like, oh, I hear this kid's good. You know, some kid is Mac and something, right? And they know who's good, because what you know is this is what these guys do. They know all the players on this Little League team because their lives are now empty and they're living in the past, and all they really have is each other and this camaraderie. And they were definitely on the same Little League team together. And now they take some beers and they put them in a cooler and they go to the Little League game, and they know everybody because they know their parents and their cousins. They played with their parents and their cousins. And they're like, hold on, we have to wait till this certain kid's up. And then they're yelling at him to take two. And of course the kid, hits a hard single and takes second base. And then they see somebody they know. Oh, that's so-and-so's mom. She used to be hot, blah, blah, blah. End of scene. But it's just like a minute where you learn so much, and it's thematically on point, because this baseball storyline that bonds Robin Williams and Matt Damon is like a thread that's pulled through the middle of that movie, which is that 1 minute scene.
Fantastic. Thank you. I would never have been able to put it into words like that, but I know the scene you're talking about. I get it. The scene I enjoy in the movie, when he slaps his hands with the phone number in his hand against the window and says, how do you like them apples?
First he asks a question. That's what makes it great. You like apples?
You like apples?
Because as the audience, you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then, I got her number. How do you like them apples? It's,
right.
because you're rooting for him, and like, Matt Damon hasn't lost a step. He was incredible in Oppenheimer, as everyone knows.
He's awesome. In Boston, I mean, it's a very towny, feel to it. So you do have the people, like in that case, that went to Harvard, everything, and then you have the townies, the locals that are there. And he really plays off that towny feel, talking about South Boston and everything. I grew up north of Boston, so a little bit different, but yeah. He's awesome.
That's another brilliant thing in that movie, is that like, that's a theme as old as time, right? Downton Abbey, the people living upstairs and the people living down, the two worlds, the people going to Harvard and then the townies, and like this tension between them, like the plebeians and the patricians, the groundlings and the royalty, like that story is just a little story, but it also encapsulates that whole like social struggle between haves and have-nots.
Ben Affleck did a great job too. I mean, playing the townie, and where he has to play up to Matt Damon, having that little extra bit of smarts to him. Working at MIT and solving the math problems. And truly a great movie. I love it.
Me too. And it was nice to see Casey Affleck also in Oppenheimer, even though he went away for a while. I think he had a little trouble.
Had to get back on track. But yeah, he was great. He was in The Town. Another great movie, but. You mentioned Emmy-winning. Can you tell us what it's like to win an Emmy?
Yeah, I can also tell you what it's like to lose. Because
okay, let's start there.
I don't think I've ever told this story. I was nominated for hosting while you were out. It's kind of a weird category, but I was nominated as a host. I would have won as a host, and the show would have won. And we were nominated against some other shows, one of which was A Baby Story. It was a huge hit. And basically they would follow a pregnant lady through her pregnancy, and then she would have the baby. And it was beautifully done. And it always got great ratings, great reviews. And I can't remember the other shows we were up against, but at that time I'd already won an Emmy as a writer on a Comedy Central show called Win Ben Stein's Money. So I sort of had a little bit of an insight on like how it works. You got to like join, and then you do a little campaigning. Anyway, the people at TLC had gotten some information so there was voters on the West Coast and the East Coast, and they had gotten the information that at least on the East Coast that we had the votes and we were going to win. So they basically called me and said, I'm not saying we're going to win, but we're going to budget for a dress, and please don't say anything inappropriate. So I was like, oh my God. Like, I would have never assumed we were going to win. because we were nominated against A Baby Story. Okay, you do not beat The Miracle of Childbirth. A baby is a human being doesn't exist, then exists 3 seconds later. I'm redecorating a rumpus room. But, like award shows are weird and surprising sometimes. So they said, look, we can't say for sure, but like, here's money for a dress. So I got the dress. I was in New York. It was the most fantastic experience. We got to go to the mayor's house and meet the mayor. And I grew up in a very urban environment, like poor, like didn't always have food at the end of the month. I never stayed in even a hotel until I was like pretty old. And so we got to stay at the Plaza, which I don't even think exists anymore, but it was like something in a movie. Like I still remember opening the door to my room and they had like opera music playing in the hotel room. And then like you open the closet and a light comes on. Like this was just, it blew my mind. And then, I had my hair and makeup done and I was all ready with my speech. And then when they announced the nominees, they have a cameraman who's like kneeling in the aisle, the camera on you. And then they were like, and the winner is A Baby Story. And that was that.
All right. So what was the mindset at that point?
I was so sad. And I had a boyfriend at the time that lived in New York. And I think I remember like maybe I was there for another couple days. Like the little girl me that was in the cheap seats of Annie just couldn't believe I was staying at the Plaza for the purpose of attending the Emmys because I was nominated. Like it's just like my dad was fixing cars in a garage, like exactly what you picture, like in a monkey suit with his name stitched over his heart. I never thought anything like that was going to happen for me. So like losing was sad, but I also already had an Emmy. So I was like, meh.
All right. So let's get back to the one you won. What's the mindset when you win?
My most lasting memory from that. So I won as a team, not just me. There was a whole team of writers and they were the most brilliant people. Like when I got that job at Comedy Central was the first time in my life I ever felt like I belonged to a group. The people that were in that writer's room, they were broken toys in the way that I was. They had a lot of obscure knowledge about things in the way that I did. They were probably locked up reading books while other kids were like playing sports or socializing. I mean, some of them were like, maybe a little bit more normal than others, but like I was the least funny by far. When we would be writing jokes in that room, I would frequently, my stomach would hurt. Like I couldn't believe how funny and brilliant these people were and weird and quirky. Like one of my friends there, he had really bad OCD, not the way people joke about it now. Like, oh my God, I'm OCD. I have to organize my pencil. No, he had real OCD. Like I went to his house once and his lock had already been replaced many, many times because he would lock and unlock and lock and unlock. And I mean, he had a really hard time leaving the house because he had to check the oven. And at work in our office, he was like swabbing his phone and swabbing his phone and swabbing his phone and would go through like bottles and bottles of alcohol. But he was like just a brilliant guy. And he really could have done anything in life, but his OCD had prevented him from doing a lot of things. And so he got this job and like somehow it was an environment at Comedy Central, where like people accepted your eccentricities if you could write the jokes. And I thought like, oh my, I love it here where a guy like him could like succeed, even though he's so broken, but he's like wonderful. And all I want to do is talk to him and he's funny and he's seen every classic movie. Like I grew up near the Castro, which is like the gay mecca of the world. And there was a revival theater there called the Castro Theater. And my mom used to take me to see all these old, like Fred Astaire, Judy Garland. Like this guy knew all of those movies. And he also knew like Rambo and he knew like French poetry and he knew about sea captains and he knew about popes. But his life had been like stumbling. So he was on that team. And the thing that I most remember about winning the Emmy was we were walking. So you go up, you get your statue, and then they take you to a side room to like take pictures. And there was a long carpeted hallway. And I just remember this guy physically falling to his knees. because just like the shock of it. And I knew, without it being something that I could articulate at the moment, but that I knew that like he'd been a disappointment to himself and to his family. And here he'd like won this big shiny trophy, and you can never take that away. It'll be in your obituary. And I knew that like he was going to be able to tell his parents and his brother, who he was really close to, and he would never again be a ne'er-do-well because he had done well. And it was so much just like physically, emotionally, and spiritually that it took him physically down to his knees. And I remember seeing a big guy, a big grown man, like topple. It was, it was a big deal. As stupid as these awards are, I've got 2 kids that play a lot of sports, and I still love winning shit. I love trophies and medals and all that. Something human. I love it.
Well, I love the fact that your best memory is somebody else's joy. I mean, that's a great way of looking at it. But the trophy itself, where is it today?
Well, that's a good question. The more irrelevant my career's become, the more braggy I feel like I want to be about it. I think it's out. I'm in my closet now here in my office. I think it's out in my office. And I also have 2 local Emmys that I won for a show here in Arizona. They're literally half the size. But like when you see a lot of local news anchors and they have like Emmy winner on their bio on social media,
yep,
you can know that like if you're in local media long enough, they're going to give you an Emmy for something, really. So I have 2 of those. One for a feature story and one for hosting a show called The List, which I was doing out here for 11 years.
That's funny. I understand that too. I mean, I worked in the music business for 30 plus years, and people would get recognized for something at some point. And I think it also helps. Like if you work for a production company, the production company benefits by you winning something. So they can benefit by the bragging rights and by the marketing of your award. So there's no doubt that they're going to want you to win something at some point, even if they have to nominate it, which is one of those odd things that happens.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Though I sometimes wish I could practice my Buddhist detachment because my current book has not yet become a bestseller.
Not yet.
And many mornings I'm like, I failed. Why? I just want it. But it's a good book. People are liking it. People are responding well to it. The reviews have been like just beautiful and more than I could ever hope. And it might just be a slow burn, so I'll just be patient. But, little kid me was always like, I've got to win the spelling bee and I've got to get an A++, and I've got to be the best in the class. Otherwise, I will not be safe in the world. So it's pretty like primal thing for me. But I mean, like, this is the best thing I've ever done in my career. It's the best thing I've written. And I'm so happy with it. And the people who read it love it. And I'm like, my therapist here, who was originally a grief counselor, but I still like check in with her once every 6 months or something. And I recently saw her and was like, oh, I'm so worried I'm going to be bad on people's podcasts and TV shows promoting my book because I'm very introverted and I don't think I'm a great guest. I much prefer writing and I much prefer asking questions. But she said, well, you wrote it. Don't think about how you're doing. You wrote it for your people. It's for your people. And I said, well, who are my people? She said, the grievers. And that's everybody. So think about the people who it's for. And I try to remind myself that, I get DMs and emails and messages every day from people who are reading it or who have read it. And that like keeps me from going into a big shame spiral. I wanted my book to be for sale at the airport. That was the big dream. Over the weekend, I was actually doing an appearance for the book in Dallas, and I walked by the airport bookstore, and I was like, I want my book to be at this bookstore. Just wanting and craving, like I had to Buddhist detach myself and just go like, like wanting and craving is just like what Buddhists call a hungry ghost. Like you can get and get and win and win and get and win. And what you're really craving or what's really going to feel good and wholesome is a true connection with another person. And that's not from winning something. That's like from what we're doing now.
It's from sharing something.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's all about sharing something. And I think it's crazy to me that you feel like you're an introvert. I mean, everything I've seen you on, you're very outspoken. Even the podcasts that you're on, you don't seem to have a problem sharing stories or discussing private moments.
No, I'm a mess. I don't like being around people. I don't like being at parties. I know people like joke about being introverted. I'm not shy, but I'm extremely introverted. I love going to movies by myself. When I was on the road doing While You're Out on TLC, we had the schedule where we'd have 2 days doing a makeover, 1 day off, 2 days doing the next house, 1 day off. And during that 1 day off, I so needed to be alone that I would sneak out of a hotel entrance at the back because I didn't want anybody from the crew to see me and then invite me along and I'd have to go. I loved those people, but I couldn't survive like I wasn't amphibious. Like I couldn't survive on land and in water. Like I had to be alone. I had to like eat dinner in my hotel room alone and prepare the next day for the show by myself. I'm not great with people. And then I second guess myself so much. I mean, I was doing the Adam Carolla Show for almost 5 years and every single day I was nervous before the show. And
Really?
Frequently the entire drive home, I just thought like, why did I say that? Or why didn't I say this?
So you replay it?
Yeah, like the more I interact with people, I think the more opportunities I have to feel ashamed or embarrassed by something I said or didn't say.
Don't you feel like most people feel that way?
I know a lot of people that love happy hour. They love mom's night out. They want to go on a girls' trip. I couldn't survive a girls' trip. I can't stay in a hotel room with anybody. Like unless it's Daniel, my husband. Like there's no way that I could enjoy a girls' trip. I'm close friends with Gina Grad, who she goes on girls' trips and I'm like, God bless. I could hang out with Gina because she's somebody I'm very close to. But even then, I don't want to share an Airbnb.
Still need your own space.
Yeah.
No, that's funny. I mean, I just found out I'm not very good on family trips. We just took a trip to the Smoky Mountains last weekend, and it was rough. It was rough. I have 3 kids now, and it was just a lot of noise, a lot of pushing, a lot of arguing. Crazy times. You get to get used to everybody's personality, and even with children, I think it's the same way. You got to get used to each child's personality in order to do it. But it was a good time and a good experience, but man, it was a tough one.
Well, when you have kids, it's never a vacation. It's a trip, but it's not a vacation.
Yeah. My wife and I were joking about it just the other day. But you're talking about that personality. Do you feel like you didn't belong where you were at the time?
I never belonged anywhere. I still don't.
No, I don't believe that.
Yeah.
I think you belong there more than you think you do, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Thanks. Well, it's funny because I guess I just talked about being a writer in that was a place I felt at home because I think a lot of those people were also introverts and had quirky, tricky personalities and, weren't like an athlete in high school or the prom queen. A lot of them were weirdos and leading a life of the mind.
Sure.
But I think that's the reason I love writing is because, in fact, because I'm trying to promote this book, I was like, I have to do social media. So I hired this woman to help me. She's really amazing, but she was like, don't do these long posts that you write. Just do a video. Why not just say what you want to say in a video? And I'm like, I can tell you exactly right because I'm a writer. And when I'm writing, it's a different part of me and I can go over and over and over it. I can write it and rewrite it until it says exactly what I want to say. When I'm speaking, I can't do that. So it doesn't really feel like me. In fact, I think a lot of people are surprised when they read anything I've written that it's me. Even at my own agency, somebody within the agency wanted to double check that I hadn't had a ghostwriter write my book. I'm like, no, a ghostwriter. I am a writer. Like that's no, people hire me to write other people's shit. But I think I can access a different part of my brain when I'm writing than when I'm speaking. Adam Carolla is incredible because he is the same. He has the same facility with language and syntax and ideas when he's speaking extemporaneously as when he's writing. And in fact, he's better at speaking off the top of his head than writing. Writing is uncomfortable for him. And basically, he has a guy write down stuff that he says on the air, and that becomes his books. I'm different. When I sit down to write, I can write fast or slow. Sometimes it's fast. Sometimes it's that first draft is the first thing that comes out, but it's me. It says what I mean. It sounds right. It like it has a music to it. It has a rhythm to it. Like I'm not saying ums or likes. It doesn't have too many words. It doesn't have too few. but I guess now we're in 2023, so I gotta be in videos. Ugh.
I love it.
Bah.
No, I'm the same way you are. I don't feel comfortable holding up my phone and talking to it and doing a little monologue. But I mean, I've done stand-up for quite a bit of time, and I think it's the same way there, that those are usually the broken people. People doing stand-up usually have a reason they're doing stand-up, and there's something in their life that has caused them to have that humor as a defense mechanism. So I can definitely see that. And when it comes to writing, I'm becoming better at it. I'm becoming better with lots of practice. However, I prefer to be speaking off the cuff for sure. I've spoken in classrooms for years, and I just feel more comfortable that way.
Yeah, it's everyone's got a different brain, like working with Adam all those years. I know he's an audio learner. Like if he hears something, he never forgets it. He synthesizes it and he deeply understands it. I have to read it.
No, I'm the same way Adam is. I have to hear it. I have a hard time reading because I have to read slow in order to comprehend what's truly going on. But when I hear things, like I can listen to audiobooks twice the speed and just feel just fine. So to me, that's my world, the audio portion of it.
I was just going to shamelessly plug my audiobook.
Yes, please. Let's do it. Let's dive deep into this book.
Read by me. I was very nervous about it for a lot of the reasons that I just mentioned, but also because I'm not a voice actress like Gina Grad, who's brilliant at doing a bunch of different voices.
She is awesome.
And there are a lot of characters in my book. My book is a memoir, but it reads like narrative fiction. There's dialogue. There are many characters, especially my dad, who's in, almost every scene. And there's little kids. There are a lot of different voices. And I was like, how am I going to differentiate these characters? So I had been following other people's audiobooks, and I noticed all of them were thanking this one guy, this director. His name's Scott Sherritt. So I started following him, and I was like, wow, this guy's done Oprah and Reese Witherspoon. He's directed Bono's book, Jennifer Grey, Questlove. I mean, he's the Spielberg of audiobooks. This guy is like, he's everywhere. So I asked Penguin, my publisher, like, do you think there's any chance Scott Sherritt would do my little book? And they said, we'll ask. And then a week later, I got an email saying Scott Sherritt has the following 4 days. And he directed my book. When you're working with somebody really good who you trust, in the case of Scott, there was just a Yoda thing where we had a Zoom before our audiobook sessions. And I told him, oh, I'm really nervous. I don't know how to do character voices. I don't know what I'm doing. And he kind of just took a pause with total confidence. And he said, this is a good book. Just deliver the words. Deliver the words. It's like, okay. Like, I don't know what it means, but I kind of know what it means. And then what it meant was like, just don't worry about it. So I just got there and I just delivered the words, and people are really liking it. I'm getting a lot of good feedback on it. It's on Audible. If you're an audiobook person, I know a lot of people much prefer listening to it. And I just love the way it turned out because there's a lot of scenes that are pretty griefy and intense. And a couple of times I cried. And so the director would just, we'd finish that scene and then he'd have me blow my nose, right? Because it changes the quality of your voice when you're crying. And so I take a beat and then I'd go back to, a baseball scene because the story oscillates back and forth between like funny, light, baseball, little league, family, my dad, talking smack about 9-year-olds and us overanalyzing the little league game like the Goodwill Hunting guys. No wonder I love that scene. And then grief stuff because I lost my brother. He died at 47 of a rare form of spinal cancer. His death was very long and agonizing. And then my mom died 4 months to the day after him. So this book is about one season of Little League that my dad and I sort of accidentally, unintentionally turned into our grief group. So it oscillates back and forth between like happy and sad, crying and laughing. And the great thing about editing, as you know, is like I blow my nose, maybe I take 2 minutes, I walk outside, I stretch when I start. But what you hear is a jump cut. So it's just like back and forth, it's so brilliant the way it was edited together. And the reason I love that is because my grief counselor told me there's a thing called oscillating grief, right? So if you've had a big loss in your life, and if you can, she says, you should go back to work if you can, because you can't be in a grief state all the time. You need to oscillate between like grieving and feeling it and going through it and processing it and being with it and just doing ordinary life, just buttering some toast, just doing your job, just driving your kids, and then you can go back. You can't be in it. The grief is like a bright light shining in your face, and it's too much if you're staring into it. And she said, the reason your book is for grievers is because your book is doing that too. Your book is oscillating between a really tough scene, someone's dying, someone's sick, and a scene that's funny, and it's baseball, and it's my dad and I getting way too into it. And, it's funny and there's laughs, and then it's grief. And just when that's too hard, it goes back. So that's the balance I tried to strike in writing it. And I think that comes through in the performance.
Tell us about that time with your dad.
So my brother played baseball. He was a lefty, born on the exact same day as my son, who was 9 during the season I describe in this book. So both my brother and my son, Nate, lefties, power hitters, love baseball. And the scene we talk about for anyone who's ever played or coached or watched or their kids played is what's called the minors, at least in Arizona Little League. And that's the year that the kids start pitching. They pitch the whole game. So when you're 8, you're in farm AAA and kids pitch 2 innings and then they wheel out a pitching machine. Previous to that, there's coach pitch, there's machine pitch, there's T-ball. But this year was the year that there's a championship, right? Gone are the participation trophies and you get 7 swings and there's 5 outs. No, this is real. One team of the 16 is going to be the champion. And there's a draft. So my husband, who's very Moneyball, he's extremely analytic. Everything's a spreadsheet.
That's awesome.
He prepared for this draft, literally like it was a major league draft. Like he knew all the kids. He took notes of the tryouts. He couldn't believe he was the only coach with a laptop at the draft. He came home. He was like, I don't understand. Like, how are people going to make decisions in real time with all of these variables without a laptop? They don't have a spreadsheet. What are they doing? And so obviously, he had a good draft and he knew who was who. And my dad and I remember we went to see the first practice, mind you. And we're like, we're not going to stay. It's just practice. Let's just see the team Daniel's drafted. Let's just watch for 5 minutes. Well, you know how it goes. It's a beautiful Arizona night. We're between the Camelback Mountains on one side, Papago on the other, the sun's setting. And we just watch these kids. And then by 3 games into it, we were obsessed. We knew every kid. Did they bat left, throw right? Were they, did they have a good glove? Could they catch a pop-up? What was their bat speed? Were they going to even swing the bat? We were obsessed. We would text each other all day. And after a game, we would break the game down. And this was how I came to forgive my dad for some of the things that happened during my childhood. This was how I came to really know my dad. And he's still my best friend to this day. I probably talk to my dad every single day.
Oh, that's great. I mean, it's great that you have a bond like that where you can get back on track and get the relationship back to where it needs to be. But it's also great that you have this time that you can share and get over the grief, because to him, it's going to be just as hard for him as it is for you at this time.
Well, I think it was harder. And my grief counselor said that I shouldn't rank people's grief. I guess that's not really what grief counselors like you to do. But my dad lost his child.
I can win this.
I know. I'm like, Dad, I'm sorry, you win. It's terrible losing a sibling. It's awful. It's still hard. There's many times it hits me like it just happened, and there's a sense of shock about it. Even though he was terminal for 6 months and sick for a couple of years, he got cancer 7 years before he died. They removed it, and then it came back. So he had like some 5 years where he was like pretty okay. And I thought, well, like, that's it. We're done with that. My brother's going to be fine. But there was a long time where he was sick the second time and terminal for 6 months. And during that time, I went and saw this grief counselor to talk about like what to say to my brother, what to say to my kids. And I remember talking to her and saying, like, this is way worse for my parents. This is worse because I have kids.
Yeah.
And it's hard to even think about it. It's hard to do the theoretical exercise of putting yourself in that position because it's too fucking awful to think about. And I think when I really got to spend time with my dad during the season I write about in Making It Home, he went from somebody who was kind of a putz and had gone bankrupt and had been, like a failure in many ways. And he won full custody of both of us. And he ended up giving me back to my mom when I was 3, which I write about in the book. So, to quote Yogi Berra, he'd made a lot of wrong mistakes, but the way he was with my brother when my brother was dying and the way he was with his grief just was heroic. There's no other way to put it. And I started like looking up to him and like, how is he doing this? How does he do this? Because my dad would go to a baseball game. And by the way, my younger one was also playing. So we were together 4 games a week that season, 4 games a week, me and my dad dragging the wagon out, putting out the Costco chairs and taking baseball way too seriously. And I could see that he knew how to oscillate. He knew how to be joyful. He knew how to be happy. The worst, fucking most horrific, awful thing had happened, and he had a front row seat to it. He and my brother were very, very close, and he watched my brother become very, very physically compromised and suffer a lot. He was in a lot of pain. He had a tumor on his spine. It was like eating away at the nerves. It was fucking brutal. And yet my dad could go to a Little League game and enjoy it. He could be in the world while also having his grief and not burying it. And in that way, I came to admire my dad, and I still do.
That's got to be tough. I could not imagine going through that, especially for that period of time. I mean, I've lost both my parents, but it was quickly. None of it was slow. I have not lost a sibling at this point. We've come close sometimes. My family runs hard and fast sometimes, but no, I couldn't imagine it. It's tough for it to be a child. It's just tough.
It is. This is why my book is really a love letter to baseball, because baseball does offer you a way home. I mean, literally, but there's so much hope in baseball. Our team, look, you're going to have a few kids that you get at the last round of the draft that, maybe they aren't natural athletes. You're going to have some kids who aren't good. There were times when the worst kid on our team with 2 strikes on him would somehow get his bat on the ball and we would win a game. Baseball, there's the bottom of the inning and the top. You can always come back. And I think that's why it's the subject of so many movies, your Field of Dreams and your Bull Durhams and your Angels in the Outfield, because theoretically a game of baseball could go on forever. It's timeless. You know what I mean? It's not governed by a clock. It's governed by outs. Well, now there's the pitching clock, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I saw that the last game I went to. I was like, that's new.
Yeah.
There's 2 teams here in town here. We have a pro team and a minor team. And my family and I, we go to games at both, but we tend to go to the minor league more often. It's more fun. There's activities for the kids, Princess Night and all that type of stuff. But then we sit down and watch the game, and it's that one time where the whole family just sits there and eats popcorn and watches the team play. And I don't know if my kids quite understand what's going on just yet. I mean, I know my eldest does, but I don't think they just quite get it. They just like watching it, and it's just a good time. It's a good place to be.
It's an excuse to be together for 9 innings or till your kids get annoying.
Until they want to go home. Yeah, no. We try to stay because they like to watch the fireworks after the game.
Those minor league games can be a lot of fun.
Oh, I'm telling you, it's more fun than the major league. And what's funny is I live in an area where the major league team hasn't been all that good. So the minor league tickets are like $10 a ticket. The major league tickets, we went to a game for $2 a ticket. It was funny.
Oh, well, lately I don't know why I became obsessed with this team called the Trash Pandas. I think they're out of Portland. I just want a t-shirt. I just want some swag because I'm like, what's cooler than having a Trash Pandas minor league baseball t-shirt or hat?
Our team was called the Freedom, the Florence Freedom, and now they've changed it to the Florence Y'alls.
Oh, I love it. I think it's so cute. Wait, where are you?
I'm in Kentucky. I'm on the border of Cincinnati. I'm literally, my street dead ends on the Ohio River.
That's where my brother was living when I came to visit him there. He had a government job. The federal government has some offices in Covington.
Yep, right down
the street. Or he was living in Covington.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember my dad and we went to a Subway sandwich, and I think we were the first people to ever order the tofu in Kentucky. Because the gal at Subway was like, yes. Wait, y'all want the tofu?
You want tofu?
She didn't know where the patties were.
No, that's too funny. Yeah, Covington's right down the street. It's one of those areas that it's up and coming. They're, revitalizing it, and it's got all sorts of nice restaurants and stuff there now. But yeah, Florence Freedom right down the road.
I appreciate the name, the Y'alls. I'm for it. I want to go on record. I'm for it. I think it's a solid double.
You know what? There's this giant water tower here right outside the mall, and they used to have the words Florence Mall at the top of it. And they got in trouble. They weren't allowed to do it because the water tower was on city property, I believe. So what they did is they just changed it to say Y'all. So everybody still knows it's the mall, but it says Y'all. So now the mascot of the Florence Y'alls is a water tower. It's just a crazy leak. I mean, it's fun.
Adorable.
It's a good time to go. Yeah. It's not as cool as Florence Freedom or anything, but hey, it's okay.
Well, it's close to free when it's $2.
Yeah. Well, that's the major team is $2. The Cincinnati Reds.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
No, the Florence Freedom was $10. We have to do every fundraiser that my kids get involved into, and it's always the Florence games. So I have a 13-year-old who's a cheerleader. I have a girl who turns 9 this weekend who's a dancer, and then I have a 1-year-old. Yes, I said it, a 1-year-old. My age, I should have grandkids, but I have a 1-year-old.
Wow. Do you have 3 girls?
3 girls, my friend, yes.
But
that's
nobody
God's
plays
way
softball?
of punishing me. Not yet.
Well, can you get that 1-year-old into it? Because softball is so fun. Just being in the Little League world, I've got friends with daughters, and I've gone to see a lot of games. There's no pitch count. Like if you're an overhand pitcher, you know it's not good for your arm, and there's rules in Little League. Girls, you have one ace on your team, and you can pitch her till the cows come home. She can throw 200 pitches.
My wife is a big softball player, so I'm sure my kids are going to end up doing it. But my 13-year-old is going into her last year of junior high school. Starts next week, I think.
Same with mine. So we have kids the same age. My older one just started 8th grade 2 days ago.
You want mine? I'll send her over.
Yeah, I wanted girls, but like now I'm a boy mom. I've leaned into it, and I sort of know what I'm doing. I know a lot about baseball now.
I prefer girls, and I have no idea what I'm doing. None. So I do prefer girls, though. But like I said, it is God's way of punishing me.
Oh.
Yeah, no, my kids are fantastic. I always say I didn't want any kids. My wife wanted 1, so we settled on 3. But every one of them was planned, but they're planned with such a huge gap. And I'm telling you, to be my age and have a 1-year-old running around the house, it's either going to keep me young or it's going to run me into the ground, one of the two. There's going to be nothing in between. This kid is wild.
Yeah.
But she's beautiful.
That's a lot. I know when I see babies, like I'm at Safeway, I just think, oh, what a cute baby. Oh my God, those people have to schlep a diaper bag and like just doing diaper changes in the trunk in the parking lot in Arizona. Oh, it's just the flashbacks.
Yep, we're in the middle of all of that right now. It's crazy. Well, hey, we do this thing here we call Unsung Heroes, where we take a minute to shine the light on somebody who works behind the scenes, somebody in a supportive role. Do you have anybody in your world that you'd like to shine a little light on?
I sure do. So doing the Adam Carolla Show and then doing my own podcast with Gina Grad, we had some fans like some that would, I had some fans that I took from, that know me from Adam's show and from Easy Listening. And I sort of got to know this one, and I realized that he was a graphic designer. I don't know. I must have just seen it on his profile. When I was writing the proposal for Making It Home, which I should tell you the subtitle in case you're going to look it up, because you should get it, Life Lessons from a Season of Little League. So I was writing a proposal which has like about the author and a summary, a marketing plan, and then it has a sample chapter of the book. I was writing it and I was struggling because I'm not an artistic person. I couldn't make it look pretty. And so I reached out to this guy. His name is Troy Liming, Liming. And I said, is there any way, I know I'm a total stranger and we don't know each other, but is there any way you could help me make this look pretty? Because I think it's good, but I just can't look at it because it's hideous. He's like, no problem. I mean, a day later, he sends me this file. It's gorgeous. I mean, all of a sudden, it's a book. You can see it. You can see it and feel it. He took pictures of me and my dad. He took baseball pictures. He has like the thread from a baseball. He's like changed the color of the fonts. He's changed the like in a day. He took this heap of words and he made it beautiful. Like he infused it with the possibility of what it could be. And since then, I've called on him. He's made little graphics for. In fact, I think you posted one of his graphics where it's turf.
Yes.
And then it has my starred review from Publishers Weekly. So I've gotten to be friends with him, and he's made a whole bunch of graphics for me. Like when I get a good review, he'll make it. It's just like part of what's hard for me of being a writer in 2023 is that I'm not great at that stuff. So Troy Liming is so talented, and he's now gone freelance. So if you need this kind of stuff, whether you need a graphic or, a proposal, a project, a flyer, a poster, a logo. This guy's incredibly talented, and he elevates what you do. I don't think I would have sold Making It Home to Penguin if Troy hadn't made it look pretty.
That's awesome. I'll put his information in the show notes as well. That's fantastic. I laugh only because I like to think I can do some graphics and I'm pretty good at it, but my wife is an actual trained graphic artist as well. And every time I do something, she's like, give it to me. And she tweaks it here and there, and all of a sudden it's like comes to life. It's just so much better. The only problem with that is she just doesn't like doing it for me.
Wow.
She does it for other people, for herself, but to do it for me, it's like pulling teeth. We laugh.
I was actually impressed because when you tweeted about this show, I was like, oh, look at him. He knows how to do graphics. I'm impressed. Well, tell your wife, I'm sorry she has to change diapers, but it sounds like you've got a beautiful family there. It's going to either keep you young or put you in an early grave, one or the other.
There you go. Yeah. No, I've got one 1-year-old now, so that means I have to live till I'm 102?
No problem. You can do it.
I'll start working out now. Ms. Teresa, my friend, I do appreciate you being here. It has been an absolute blast. I would like to leave you with the final word.
Thank you for having me. Is that should I have said something more philosophically sound?
No, you know what? That's really all that we need is thanking me.
Thank you.
Now, I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Teresa is an amazing person, and what a sense of humor. So please join me in giving her a big thanks for taking the time to share her stories with us, and thank you for taking the time to hang with me here. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. You can do that and find the links to everything mentioned over at jayfranze.com/episode 25. Thank you again for listening, and I'll catch you next week.
Thanks for listening to The Jay Franze Show. Make sure you visit us at jayfranze.com. Follow, connect, and say hello. This episode has been brought to you by VR Knives, your source for 100% custom knives made by a true rock star. So, if you're in the market for a new piece of art, reach out to VR Knives. 407-421-5528. 407-421-5528.